if Eala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court.
Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world?
And then we have a big challenger after this
After a ruthless 6-0, 6-2 domination in Miami, Alex Eala dropped just 3 words, and they sent the entire Filipino internet into a frenzy.
A little nervous. It was a big stadium and, of course, a big opponent. And I was...
Over 30,000 Filipinos live in Austria alone. That's not a projection. That's not hype. That's a real, documented community. Families, professionals, workers, people who have built their lives there and have been waiting for a moment exactly like this. Now expand the map. Germany, Switzerland, Italy, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom. Entire pockets of Filipino communities spread across Europe, connected, mobile, and passionate. Within a 2 to 3 hour flight radius of Linz, the reachable fan base doesn't just grow, it explodes into the hundreds of thousands. And globally, over 10 million overseas Filipinos. This is the scale we're talking about. This is the audience that has been following Alex Eala across continents, showing up in numbers that most tournaments simply weren't prepared for. And yet, for her first clay appearance on European soil, the Linz Open made a decision that now sits at the center of controversy. They chose a venue that holds approximately 3,000 people. Not 30,000, not 10,000, not even 5,000, 3,000. A multi-purpose convention hall, the Design Center Linz. And that decision is exactly what critics are now tearing apart. Because by this point, the warning signs weren't subtle. They were impossible to miss. Go back to Melbourne. Court 6. Capacity, roughly 1,000. What happened? Thousands of Filipino fans flooded Melbourne Park. Lines stretched for hundreds of yards before sunrise. Hundreds were turned away. The energy inside the court became overwhelming. The umpire had to step in multiple times just to maintain order. On the other side of the net, the pressure wasn't theoretical, it was visible. Opponents felt it. Matches became emotional, chaotic, and unforgettable. And afterward, organizers admitted it. They underestimated the demand. That moment should have reset expectations across the entire WTA calendar. It didn't, because everything that followed only confirmed that Melbourne wasn't an outlier. It was the beginning. Dubai? Sold out before the later rounds. Indian Wells? Fans lining up 6 hours early, wrapped in blankets, standing in desert cold, refusing to leave even as matches were delayed past midnight. Stadiums filled, walkways packed, atmospheres transformed. Tournament executives even acknowledged the commercial impact. One behind-the-scenes feature centered around Eala became the most watched content of the entire event. This isn't just fan support, it's movement-level demand. And at the center of it is a diaspora that travels, organizes, and shows up loud, visible, and united. Which brings us back to Linz. Because by the time this decision was made, all of that data already existed. Every incident, every sold-out session, every overwhelmed venue. It was documented, discussed, and publicly acknowledged. Former national coach Carl Santamaria called it out clearly after Melbourne. The failure wasn't the fans. It was the organizers who didn't anticipate the scale. He even stated that her matches could have filled arenas with 5,000 seats or more. That assessment now echoes even louder, because Linz had more time, more evidence, more case studies, and still chose a 3,000-seat hall for a moment that could have drawn tens of thousands. For a player whose fanbase has already proven it can transform entire tournaments. For a community that has crossed oceans, literally, to be present. This isn't just a logistical oversight anymore. It feels like a missed opportunity of massive proportions. Because for many Filipino fans in Europe, this wasn't just another tournament stop. This was their moment, their first real chance to see her live, without crossing continents. And instead of opening the gates wide enough to meet that demand, the door got smaller. Not closed, but limited. And when the numbers, the history, and the momentum all point in one direction, decisions like this don't just raise questions. They demand answers.
Alex is someone I get along very well with. on and off the court. Again, another physical battle, but
She's having the same effect that Fonseca was having, like, on the men's side last.
By the time the Linz draw was announced, the story was already global. ESPN had framed it as the tennis equivalent of a world tour, the Eala Tour. Every major broadcast network, every serious tennis publication, had already filed their version of it. The rise wasn't emerging anymore. It was established. And yet, despite all of that visibility, all of that data, all of that momentum, the tournament is being staged in a 3,000-seat venue. This is where the conversation shifts from commentary to consequence. Because what happens in Linz over the next 2 weeks isn't just about one player at one tournament. It's a preview of something much bigger. How the WTA's mid-tier calendar will either adapt to this new reality or get left behind by it. Start with the competitive stakes. Alex Eala arrives in Austria ranked number 45, having dropped 270 ranking points after failing to defend her Miami semi-final from the previous season. And clay? Statistically, it's her weakest surface. In 2025, her record on clay stood at 2 wins and 4 losses. Round of 16 in Warsaw, round of 64 in Madrid, round of 128 in Rome. First round exit at Roland Garros. She's acknowledged it herself. This is where her game still needs the most growth. Now layer that with context. Unseeded. On her weakest surface. With ranking points slipping, the pressure in Linz is real. A quarterfinal exit likely keeps her outside the top 40. A semi-final run pushes her back toward the top 30. A final, or a title, completely flips the narrative around her clay season and accelerates her ranking recovery. So yes, Linz matters to her career. But what Linz represents beyond the court, that matters to the entire sport. Because if she makes a deep run at a tournament where her fans physically cannot get in, the WTA misses something far more valuable than ranking points. It misses a commercial moment. And those don't repeat easily. The tournament that gets this right, a venue large enough, infrastructure ready, fan access coordinated, broadcast amplified, doesn't just host matches. It generates audience data that sponsors pay 8 figures to access. Linz had that opportunity first. And by locking itself into a 3,000-seat ceiling, it guaranteed it won't be the one to capitalize on it. We've already seen the blueprint for both failure and success. Melbourne Court 6 became the case study in what happens when demand is underestimated. Long queues, turned away fans, overwhelmed officials, viral footage, public acknowledgement of error. That was the warning. Dubai read it correctly. They moved her matches to a main show court early and sold out the entire week. Indian Wells did the same. Stadium 3, sunrise queues, packed stands, commercial payoff. The roadmap was clear. Linz chose not to follow it because the design center's 3,000 seat capacity isn't just small. It's less than 1/3 of what the city's own Tips Arena can hold. A venue the tournament itself previously used. Yes, the relocation made sense at the time, but that decision belonged to a different era of tennis. Not this one. Not the era where one player can mobilize a global diaspora. And the most frustrating part? The solutions weren't complicated. Outdoor screens could have expanded access. Coordination with Vienna's Filipino community could have amplified turnout. Adjacent venue partnerships were available months in advance. None of this required rebuilding infrastructure. The tools were there. The willingness to use them simply didn't match the scale of the moment. And that gap between what was possible and what was done is exactly where the failure lives. Because this wasn't unpredictable. It was preventable. And it's consequential. The attendance figures in April won't just reflect ticket sales. They'll answer a bigger question. Did anyone in that decision-making chain recognize the opportunity before it closed? There's another layer here that often gets overlooked, and it might be the most important one. The Filipino fanbase isn't passive. It's economically active. This is a community that flies across continents, that books hotels, that buys tickets early, that shows up in coordinated groups, wearing matching colors, carrying flags, creating atmosphere. Melbourne.
Dubai.
Indian Wells. Different continents. Same behavior. This isn't casual support. This is mobilized demand. And in Austria alone, there are 30,000 Filipinos. Vienna is less than 2 hours from Linz by train. Across Europe, nearly 2 million are within reach. An audience ready to spend, ready to travel, ready to fill arenas. If given the chance, Linz didn't provide that chance. Not out of malice. There's no evidence of deliberate exclusion. But institutional inertia, combined with a failure of foresight, produced the same result: a 2 million strong fan base and a 3,000-seat door. Here's the prediction that follows from all of this. The first WTA tournament in Europe that properly scales for this moment. Venue size, fan coordination, broadcast reach will set the commercial template for the next decade of mid-tier clay events. Madrid already operates at a higher tier. Rome sits at the top. But the space between them? That's where the real opportunity is. And Linz had it first. Now imagine this. If Eala reaches the final, or wins, the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. A tournament benefiting from her name, her ranking, her draw power, while structurally limiting how many people could witness it live. That won't go unnoticed, because the communities following her aren't isolated. They're globally connected, digitally active, and highly vocal. What happens in Linz won't stay in Linz. It will follow the tournament's reputation long after the clay season ends. This is still a respected event. Established. Historic. Running since 1987. Champions like Coco Gauff, Aryna Sabalenka, and Yelena Ostapenko have all lifted trophies here. But history didn't prepare it for this moment. And treating 2026 like every edition before it, that's the core miscalculation. At this point, the question isn't whether a mistake was made. The numbers already answer that. What matters now is whether anyone across the WTA ecosystem is paying attention. Because the next opportunity is coming, and it will belong to the tournament director, who actually reads the room.